AITA for laughing when my bride got stood up by her ex at our wedding? My name is Aaron. I am 31 years old, and what happened on my wedding day was so absurd that even today, I have a hard time processing it calmly. Nevertheless, I will recount the events exactly as they unfolded. Paige and I had been together for 2 years. She was 27. It was not a perfect relationship, but it was not chaos either. We met at work in a rather monotonous corporate office environment, and at first, everything flowed naturally. Long discussions, common interests, simple outings to local restaurants or parks. Nothing extraordinary, but a comforting stability. Over time, Paige started talking more and more about marriage. Not marriage in general, but her wedding. She had a very specific vision in mind. A grandiose, elegant ceremony, almost worthy of a movie scene. She often mentioned a large luxury estate venue, warm lights at sunset, live music, impeccably dressed guests, and a spectacular entrance that would capture everyone's attention. I just listened and nodded. Not because I shared exactly that vision, but because I understood how much it meant to her. The problem was that, realistically, my financial situation did not match that kind of event at all. Yes, I had savings, but certainly not enough to make such a dream come true without putting myself in an irresponsibly difficult position. When I asked her to marry me, I did it with sincerity. I told her that I wanted to build a future with her, that I saw myself by her side, but I was also honest about the type of wedding I could afford. She accepted, or at least, that is what I thought. During the months of preparation, I began to notice slight changes in her behavior. Nothing obvious enough to alarm me at the time, but strange enough to leave me with a vague feeling of discomfort. She lost focus easily. Sometimes, in the middle of an important discussion about the wedding, she would get lost in her phone. She did not answer immediately when I spoke to her. On several occasions, I asked if everything was all right, and she always gave me the same answer. Yes, I am fine. I am just tired. There was also something else. From time to time, she brought up her past indirectly. No names, no specific details, but phrases like, before, everything was more intense, or some things are not easily forgotten. I did not try to dig deeper. I told myself that everyone had a past, and that insisting on it would only bring unnecessary tension. Nevertheless, a feeling persisted. Hard to describe, but constant, as if something inside her was not completely resolved. The choice of the venue was a recurring subject of conflict. She insisted on that famous luxury estate venue. I showed her the numbers, the quotes, the more accessible alternatives. Finally, we found a compromise, a more modest banquet hall at a reputable hotel, beautifully decorated, but far from what she had initially imagined. She accepted, but her enthusiasm was never the same after that. Then the wedding day arrived. From the morning, something seemed off. It was not the usual stage fright. I expected to be nervous, yes, but what I perceived in her was different. When I saw her before the ceremony, her reaction was not what one would expect. No visible emotion, no tears, no bright smile, just a brief greeting and a gaze that never truly settled. The dress she had chosen was simple, not ugly, but clearly much more discreet than anything she had described for months. Taken in isolation, this detail would not have been a problem. But considering everything she had expressed before, it was a glaring contradiction. And then there was her phone. Paige would not let it go. She kept it constantly in her hand, checking the screen every few minutes, even surrounded by her family or in the middle of a conversation. Several times, I saw her unlock the device quickly, then put it away immediately, as if she did not want anyone to see what she was doing. Once, I asked her directly, "Are you expecting something important?" Her response was immediate, almost automatic. "No, I am just looking at messages." I did not insist. In hindsight, I should have. The ceremony began. The guests were seated, family, friends, colleagues. The atmosphere was normal, even pleasant. Whispers, smiles, photos taken here and there. I was at the altar waiting. When Paige started walking toward me, all eyes turned to her. In any other situation, this moment would have been emotionally charged. But even then, something was wrong. Her expression was serious, not cold, but disconnected. She walked with confidence, but without that joy expected from someone about to get married. She reached the altar. We stood face to face. The officiant began his usual speech about commitment, union, and respect. I tried to concentrate, to stay calm, to convince myself that everything was fine, but I noticed something else. Paige was looking behind her, not constantly, but several times. She turned her head slightly, as if she were looking for someone among the guests or beyond. An uneasiness began to grow within me. The officiant asked us to hold hands. We did. Her hands were cold. When the time for the vows arrived, I spoke first. I said what I had prepared. It was not perfect, but it was sincere. When I finished, everyone waited for Paige to speak. A few seconds of silence. She did not react right away. She looked around, then behind her again. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, "My ex is going to arrive any minute now, and I will leave with him forever." No laughter, no murmurs, nothing. At first, it was a total silence, as if no one had yet understood what had just been said. I thought I had misheard. I looked at her, waiting for her to smile, to add something, to clarify that it was a joke. But she did not. Her expression was completely serious. The officiant remained frozen. Some people in the front row exchanged glances. Others started whispering. I said nothing right away. I just stared at her, waiting for her to add something, but she did not. She simply looked toward the entrance, as if she were genuinely waiting for someone to appear. That was when I understood. It was not an impulse. It was not a mistake. It was something she had decided to say in front of everyone. Her mother was the first to react. "What are you talking about, Paige?" she called out in a loud voice, visibly upset. "Stop your jokes." That comment briefly eased the tension, as if everyone wanted to believe it was a prank. It was easier. But Paige shook her head. "It is not a joke," she replied firmly. "My ex and I reconnected a month ago. We decided to run away together abroad. We are going to start a new life. He told me he would come get me." That statement was worse than the last. There was no more room for doubt. Some guests began to murmur openly. The officiant took a step back, completely overwhelmed. I felt something strange. It was not anger, not yet. It was a kind of emptiness mixed with disbelief, as if my mind refused to accept what was happening. "How can you do this?" I finally said. She looked at me, and for the first time that day, she seemed truly emotionally involved. But it was neither sadness nor guilt. It was cold. "I always wanted a big wedding," she said. "I always said so. And when I saw what you could actually offer me, I realized I had made a mistake." That sentence triggered an immediate reaction. Her mother stood up abruptly from her seat, visibly distraught. "But what are you talking about?" she insisted, unable to contain her agitation. "It is the truth," Paige replied, straightforwardly, without hesitation. "I was not going to stay stuck in a mediocre life." "Paige, that is enough," her mother interrupted her, her face marked with shame. "Pull yourself together." Voices were raised between them almost instantly. It was no longer a discussion. It was an open confrontation exposed in front of all the guests. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others, on the contrary, stared at the scene without the slightest embarrassment, as if captivated by this unexpected spectacle. I stood there motionless at the altar, not knowing what to do. Intervene, leave, speak. Everything seemed pointless in the face of the situation's absurdity. The minutes began to drag on, and no one came. Paige kept casting glances toward the entrance. She checked her phone, took a few steps, then stopped. 10 long minutes passed. 10 minutes during which the tension did not disappear. It simply changed shape. What initially looked like shock turned into a collective discomfort. Low conversations began to emerge. Some looked at their watches, others stared at the floor. That is when I decided to break the heavy silence. "Where is your ex?" I asked in a sharper tone. She did not hesitate. "He is coming," she replied. "He told me he would not be long." I shook my head. This is ridiculous. I did not need to raise my voice. Everyone already understood. At that precise moment, something shifted among the attendees. A woman sitting at a side table stood up. I recognized her immediately. She was a friend of Paige's. She had always been direct, sometimes even a bit blunt, but I never would have imagined she would intervene this way. She started to laugh. Not a nervous laugh, a genuine, loud laugh, impossible to ignore. She got stood up, she blurted out. Several heads turned toward her. "Shut up," Paige retorted, annoyed. "You do not know anything." "I know everything, actually," her friend replied, perfectly calm. Then she took out her phone. She held it high enough for Paige to see the screen. From the altar, I could not make it out clearly, but the change on Paige's face was immediate. Her expression went from anger to confusion in a fraction of a second. "What?" she murmured, stepping slightly closer. The friend turned the phone, just enough so that other people nearby could also look. It was a video call, and on the other side, there he was. Her ex lying on a beach, light sand, the ocean in the background, an umbrella, sunglasses on his nose, a drink in his hand, completely relaxed as if he were on vacation. No trace of urgency, no intention of moving. Nothing in his attitude suggested he was coming. Paige took a step back. "No, that is impossible." Her friend brought the phone a little closer. "Say hello to him," she said with irony. "He is looking at you." The man raised his bottle in greeting. A casual gesture, almost amused, as if all this were just entertainment. Paige shook her head. No, it is not." She could not even finish her sentences anymore. "Did you really think he was going to come?" Her friend continued with a barely hidden smile. Paige did not answer. She stared at the screen. "You told me that," she began, speaking to the phone. "You said you would come." The man cracked a smile, not warm, but mocking. I could not clearly hear what he was saying, but his attitude spoke for itself. He was not taking anything seriously. On the contrary, he seemed to be enjoying the scene. Little by little, other guests stood up to get a better look. Then more followed. A circle formed around the friend. What was initially a silent tension turned into an almost chaotic scene. No one was pretending to look away anymore. Everyone wanted to understand. Paige was completely lost. "That is not what we planned," she whispered. "You said we were going to start over." Her friend let out a small laugh. "Yes, start over," she repeated. "But without you." Paige glared at her. "Shut up," she insisted. "You do not know what you are talking about." "Actually, I do," the friend replied. "Because I spoke with him." A new murmur rippled through the crowd. "What?" Paige asked, completely thrown off balance. "Yes," the friend continued. "I spoke to him a few days ago. Do you know what he told me?" Paige did not answer, as if she refused to hear. "That he never had any intention of coming," the friend blurted out. "And that he was just messing with you." Silence fell again. But it was no longer the same silence. This one was heavy with embarrassment, with shame. Paige looked at the screen one more time. "It is not true," she murmured. "You were texting me?" The man took a sip of his drink. Then he spoke. This time, some nearby guests heard. "Relax, it was just for fun." Paige remained frozen, as if her body refused to process reality. "No," she repeated. "No, you said that." But she did not finish because there was nothing left to say. No more promises, no more hope, not even a credible excuse, just the truth exposed in front of everybody. And then, without warning, her friend hung up. The sharp sound of the disconnected call echoed like a brutal conclusion. Paige kept staring at the black screen, as if hoping the image would return. But nothing happened. The friend put her phone away calmly, then looked Paige straight in the eyes. "Actually, we made a bet," she said bluntly. "If he managed to get you to ruin your wedding, I would give him money." Silence. No one moved. "I did not think you would fall for it," she added. "But well, he won." No emotion in her voice, no attempt at justification, just a cold observation. It was the final blow. Paige did not react right away. Her face slowly crumbled. First incomprehension, then realization, and finally something deeper. She started crying, not discreetly, not silently. A visible, uncontrollable breakdown. "I trusted him," she whimpered between two sobs. But nobody approached. No one tried to comfort her. At that moment, one of my friends stood up. I already knew he was not going to be diplomatic. "Well, seriously," he said, looking around. "Can we move on and go eat? I am starving." A few nervous laughs broke out. "It would be a shame to waste all this, wouldn't it?" he added. And there, what little solemnity remained completely vanished. It was no longer a wedding. It was an unnamed situation, an absurd gathering. Paige kept crying, but suddenly, something shifted subtly, as if a desperate idea had just crossed her mind. She raised her head, wiped her tears, and then took a deep breath. "All right," she stated. "We are continuing the wedding. Forget all this." Several people looked at her in disbelief. "Oh, my love," she added, looking at me. "Let's keep going." That was probably the most baffling thing in this whole story. Not the betrayal, not the humiliation, but this absurd attempt to return to normal as if nothing had happened. I looked at her for a few seconds and felt no anger, just something cold and distant. I feel bad for you, I said calmly. I paused for a moment. But I do not know who is the worst in this story. A pause. Me, because you chose to reveal this on our wedding day. I stared at her. Or you, for making a fool of yourself in front of everyone. Nobody intervened. No one tried to stop me. How do you socially recover from this? I added. I pity you. Murmurs ran through the assembly. Some agreed. Others remained silent. This is so unreal, I continued, that I almost want to write this story down somewhere. Paige shook her head. It was a mistake, she pleaded. Please, let's continue. But it was over. The guests' reactions changed. The silence gave way to something rawer. Laughter, then comments. At first discreet, then unfiltered. Unbelievable. How pathetic. What a mess. Not from everyone, but enough to fill the space. Paige took one step back, then another. She sought her mother's gaze, hoping for support, but she did not find what she was looking for. Her mother shook her head, visibly devastated. How could I have such a disappointing daughter? She blurted out. Then, even more coldly, she added, Fortunately, your father is not here to see this. He would not have been able to bear it. Those words were more painful than all the rest. Paige collapsed once more. Mom, we are leaving, she said in a broken voice. But her mother did not move. Leave by yourself, she answered. I will leave later. I do not want to be seen with you. What a disgrace. Paige stood frozen, as if she could not believe what she had just heard. Then, without another word, she turned around and ran out, crying and overwhelmed. No one held her back. No one followed her. The door closed behind her, and with it, everything stopped, or at least what was left of this affair. I stood there for a few more seconds, exactly in the spot where everything had just fallen apart. I was not thinking about anything specific. I was not trying to analyze. I was simply taking it in, as if my mind needed a moment to catch up with what my eyes had just seen. Then one of my friends approached me. Are you all right? He asked. I did not reply immediately, not because I did not want to, but because the question made almost no sense in that moment. Everything was obvious. Everything could be read in the air, in the glances, in the strange hush that had just replaced the chaos. Ultimately, I did not leave the venue. The banquet was already paid for. The food was served, and leaving would have been, in a way, giving even more importance to what had just occurred. So I stayed. We sat down, my friends, a few family members, even my mother. The atmosphere was hard to define. It was not a party, but it was not a time of mourning either. It was something in between. A suspended gathering, almost surreal, where everyone knew they had just witnessed something abnormal. Conversations slowly resumed in small fragments. Incomplete sentences, exchanged glances, silences that said more than words. My mother stayed close to me. She did not speak right away, but her presence was enough. It was a form of silent support, more soothing than any speech. That night, we went back home. The ride was quiet. A different quiet from the one at the ceremony. Lighter, less tense. It was no longer incomprehension. It was fatigue, a profound weariness after a day that should never have existed. In the following days, things evolved rapidly. Too rapidly, even. The story spread first among the guests, then to close friends, then beyond. Not because I tried to tell it, but because it was inevitable. A scene like that does not stay locked in a single room. It circulates, it transforms, it becomes a tale that people tell, comment on, and sometimes exaggerate. Paige disappeared. Not figuratively, literally. She left town. No one knew exactly when, how, or where to. The only certainty was that she never returned to our apartment. She did not collect her belongings. She did not try to contact me. Nothing. As if she had decided to entirely erase this part of her life, to delete it without leaving a trace. As for me, I was left with what remained, her things, her clothes, her personal items. At first, I thought about keeping them, waiting to see if she would return. But as the days passed, that idea lost all meaning. Wait for what? For whom? Eventually, I donated most of her belongings to charity. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because there was no longer any reason to keep them. They were just objects, and what they represented no longer existed. With time, things became clearer. Not in the sense that I understood why all this had occurred, but in the sense that I accepted it did happen and that there was nothing to save, nothing to fix, nothing to salvage. If anything remained from this whole ordeal, it was a strange sensation, as if I had witnessed something that should never have happened in such a way. Something that even today seems unreal, and yet it is very real. Comment: I really hope this story gave you some space to reflect. What struck me most is how crucial it is to hold on to your self-respect even when it's hard. Setting healthy boundaries in relationships protects your peace and your heart. We all have a responsibility to choose people who treat us with genuine kindness and care. Healing after disappointment takes time, and that's completely okay. Learning to choose calm over unnecessary drama is one of the kindest things you can do for yourself. Be gentle with yourself while you process your feelings and move forward. Remember that your worth has nothing to do with how others behave. True strength comes from knowing when to let go and when to keep going. I truly believe you deserve real love and a life filled with peace and respect. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.